A city of 20 million people begins as a wedding present. You're standing on a strip of wet sand at low tide. The sea is on three sides of you. Behind you, palm trees lean over a muddy shore, and a handful of fishermen are dragging nets out of the shallows. There is no city here. There is no road, no wall, no name that anyone far away would know. In front of you, the water isn't one bay. It's a maze of channels cutting between 7 separate islands, and twice a day the tide floods the gaps until the whole place looks less like land and more like a scatter of green humps in a gray sea. In a little over 300 years, more than 20 million people will live on this exact spot. So, why here? Why this broken, half-drowned huddle of islands and nowhere else along the coast? Look at the water again, not the islands. At the water. To the west is the open Arabian Sea, deep and wide, a highway that runs all the way to Arabia, to Africa, to Europe. But an open sea is dangerous. Ships need somewhere to hide from the monsoon, somewhere calm to load and unload. And here, tucked on the eastern side of the islands, is one of the finest natural harbors in the whole of Asia. Deep water, sheltered from the worst of the storms, protected by the very islands that make the place look like such a mess. That is the secret. The sea in front gives you the world. The harbor behind gives you a safe door into it. And there is one more thing the land is doing for you. For half the year, from June to September, the monsoon slams into this coast with wind and rain that can tear a wooden ship apart. Most of the western shore has no shelter to offer. But these islands break the swell. They wrap a calm pocket of deep water in their arms. If you are a sea captain, caught between a storm and a shallow reef, this scattered little archipelago is the safest thing for hundreds of miles in either direction. The people who understand this first are the Koli. They are fishermen, and they have lived on these islands for centuries, long before anyone drew a border here. They give the place its early name. They read the tides. They know exactly where a boat can come in and where it will run aground. For a long time, that is all this place is, a fishing ground. A few villages of thatched huts on 7 islands called Kolaba, Old Woman's Island, Bombay, Mazagoan, Peril, Worli, and Mahim. Now, watch the outside world start to notice. Traders and rulers pass through for centuries. But the real turn comes in 1534. The Sultan of Gujarat, squeezed by enemies, hands the islands to a new power arriving by sea. The Portuguese. They call the place Bombay, which many say comes from Bombay, meaning good little bay. They saw the same thing you're seeing. The bay was good, but the Portuguese never really build a city here. They plant a few churches, a small fort, some manor houses. The islands stay quiet, green, and mostly empty. For over a century, the greatest harbor on the coast just sits there, waiting. Then comes one of the strangest twists in the story of any city on earth. In 1661, a king in England gets married. Charles II takes a Portuguese bride, Catherine of Braganza. And as part of her dowry, the gift a bride's family sends with her, Portugal hands over these 7 far-off islands to the English crown. A city of 20 million people begins as a wedding present. The English king has no idea what to do with a scatter of islands on the far side of the world. So in 1668, he leases the whole lot to the East India Company for the almost insulting rent of £10 a year. £10. For the future financial capital of India. Now the map finally starts to change. The company doesn't want a fishing village. It wants a fortress and a port it fully controls. Under a governor named Gerald Aungier in the 1670s, the real founding begins. He builds up the fort. He invites in weavers, merchants, blacksmiths, and traders of every religion, promising them safety and freedom to work. He builds a mint and a court. Word spreads. This is a place where an outsider can arrive with nothing and build something. People come. Gujaratis, Parsis, Boras, Jews, Armenians, Hindus, and Muslims and Christians, each community pouring into the fort town and setting up shop beside the last. In a few decades, the population leaps from a few thousand to tens of thousands. A rope walk here, a shipyard there, a bazaar, a customs house. The quiet Portuguese backwater is becoming a working port. But there is still one enormous problem, and you're standing right on it. The islands are still islands. At high tide, the sea still pours through the gaps and floods the low ground in the middle. There is one great breach at Worli where the ocean rushes in and swallows the land twice a day. You cannot grow a proper city on 7 pieces that keep vanishing under the tide, so the company does something audacious. If the sea keeps breaking the land apart, they will simply wall the sea out. Through the 1700s, they launch a vast project to build a great causeway, the Hornby Vellard, to block that breach at Worli and stop the flooding for good. Engineers pile up stone and earth across the gap. Slowly, the tide is beaten back. The drowned middle dries out, and now the truly astonishing part. Once the sea is blocked, they don't stop. They start filling in the shallow channels between the islands with mud, rock, and rubble. Piece by piece, decade by decade, 7 separate islands are stitched together into one. It is a single, solid tongue of land jutting into the sea. Humans didn't just build a city on the geography. They rebuilt the geography itself. On that new land, the city explodes. The turning point arrives in the 1860s, and it comes from the other side of the planet. In America, the Civil War breaks out, and the supply of cotton from the American South to the mills of Britain is cut off almost overnight. Britain's factories are starving for cotton, and where can they suddenly get it? India. Shipped out through the one great western harbor, through Bombay, money pours in like the tide once did. Cotton merchants become millionaires. The harbor fills with ships. Grand stone buildings rise where huts once stood. 2 more things arrive to lock the boom in place. In 1853, the very first passenger railway in all of India runs out of this city, carrying passengers from Bombay toward Thane. Now the cotton and goods of the vast Indian interior can pour down to the coast on iron rails and out through the harbor to the world. And in 1869, a canal opens thousands of miles away, at Suez, slicing a shortcut between Europe and the Indian Ocean. Suddenly, Bombay is dramatically closer to Europe by sea than it has ever been. The harbor that always faced west is now facing straight down the fastest trade route on Earth. Geography, once again, is destiny. The sea in front, the harbor behind. And now a railway feeding it from the land and a canal pulling the world toward it. The city keeps layering upward. Textile mills line the reclaimed ground until people call it the Manchester of the East. Docks stretch along the harbor. Broad avenues and vast railway stations go up. Workers arrive from every corner of India, speaking dozens of languages, packing onto the same narrow finger of made land. The islands are long gone now, buried under stone and rail and crowd. The tide still rises twice a day, but now it laps against seawalls and dock gates instead of flooding villages. In time the name changes too, from Bombay to Mumbai, echoing the old goddess the Koli fishermen honored here long before any king or company arrived. And today, more than 20 million people live packed onto this reclaimed land. It is the financial heart of India, home to its stock exchange, its banks, its film industry. It is one of the most crowded, most expensive, most relentless cities on the planet. So step back to where you started. Low tide, wet sand. 7 green islands scattered in a gray sea, and a few Koli fishermen dragging their nets ashore. You're standing on that same spot. You just can't see it anymore. The 7 islands are still down there, fused into one, buried under 20 million people who have no idea they're living on a map that the sea used to erase twice a day.